You mentioned a bit about steam oil ratios. Those are absolutely critical in thermal operations. Many investors may be aware of the steam oil ratios in, say, SAGD of maybe 2.5 to 3, whereas yours are a little bit higher, but that's not necessarily a problem, is it?
No, it's not a problem at all. I mean, our steam oil ratios will be in the 4 to 6 range for steam oil. It's certainly well within the parameters of steam oil ratios. And again, what that means for us is we may have to make tighter spacing on some of our patterns that we actually have, and or we may have longer response times in certain areas of the reservoir. We factored all those things in. We factored in what we estimate for some recovery factor ranges that we have, and all that's kind of went into our development plan that we submitted to the government.
Okay. And the latest information that we have is that the P50 oil in place is around 1.7 billion barrels. You mentioned the recovery factors. What kind of recovery factors should we be thinking about?
Well, the P50 is 1.7 billion barrels, which I think is a big number. It's 1.7 billion barrels of contingent resource. I think it's important for us to understand it's contingent resource. And we had Netherlands and Sewell come out and do their evaluation. They're noted throughout the world reserves evaluation. They actually came up with the 1.7, or actually 1.6 contingent resource that they had for a P50. We did our own internal work with our own technical resources, and we came out with about 1.7, 1.8. So we were about in the same range as far as the P50 range for contingent resource. Okay. So once you have contingent resource, this is not reserve, this is contingent resource there. So when you think about reserves that we potentially have, or recoverable reserves, again, I go back to cyclic steam stimulation. Typically, you get 10 to 25% recovery in the cyclic steam stimulation there. When you go to full-scale steam flooding, continuous flooding, your recovery rates can range from 40 to 70% in the better reservoirs there. So you apply those numbers to our contingent resource base to take a view of how much potential recoverable reserves we actually have, and it's a big number.
Yeah. So from producing those recoverable reserves, you're going to have to burn some of that crude in order to generate the steam to produce further crude. And can you talk a bit about how that steam is generated and what kind of percentage of losses or fuel consumed is in process?
Well, we actually benefit right now by being able to burn our own crude. Our crude is of the type where it can actually go into our steam generators without any alterations, and we burn it to generate our steam that we actually have for the field. And as we grow the field and require more steam generation, we'll use that initially as a fuel source. But we really want to understand and try to find out are there different alternatives for the future when we ramp up our production in order to unlock that value and have that fuel actually go into the market as sales.
Okay. What kind of alternatives are you thinking about? Are there potentially gas reservoirs nearby? Could you be using other technology like solar generation?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at all options. Everything's on the table now for us to look at, and we also have 3 additional exploration blocks that we own and 100% operate. And these blocks are large exploration blocks, and they've actually had some shows and some wells that were drilled in these blocks in the 70s and 80s when companies were looking for the big major finds. Yes. We include that as part of our portfolio of opportunities to go back into these blocks and potentially source some gas or source some oil to utilize in our generators.
Okay. But for the moment, I suppose you'll be producing a fairly sweet but heavy crude. What kind of pricing can we expect? I know from my work that Kern River trades at around a 15% discount to Brent. Is that the kind of level that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think that's certainly within the range of what it is. Like I say, I think we have a very, our assay is a very clear assay, and the fact that we can actually go and use this, we can add a little diesel into this and get a HF380 blend, gives you an idea of the type of crude that we actually have now.
Okay. And initially you'll have to truck the crude to presumably the capital or to other markets, but what's the long-term potential market for these barrels?
Well, yeah, initially our focus is during the early stages of our production will be to go into the local market, which we've talked to several potential off-takers in the local market there, but the local market is not of the size where it will take all the barrels that we'll be producing according to our plan. So our development plan basically has a pipeline to a port, and we'll export that into the external market. And because of this crude that we actually have, it's very, very marketable in many different areas. It can be used for marine fuel. It can be used, going into refineries. There's got a lot of different outlets here for our crude and where we're going to be at the time we ramp up our production.
And as I understand it, the local market is paying a premium for crude that it imports because Madagascar at the moment doesn't produce any oil. So you can take advantage of probably some fairly good pricing initially for the domestic market, only to move on to the larger international market later.
Yeah, well, we think it'll be a benefit actually for the country to be able to utilize their own crude, because this is their asset, and we'll be able to use this, and they can offset paying higher prices for importing crude into the country. So we're working with several of the different state agencies to take a look at that and see how that can be handled. And over the long term, it will be a benefit of selling into the local market. For them, they'll get a price reduction, and we'll just be looking to try to get market prices for our crude.
If you need any further information, you can go to the Edison website.